So I started my blog, I would say right around when I finished college. So this is now like 100 years ago. But my book, which is right there, I think is my thumb covering. Yeah, there it is. Yay. This is a tiffin. Our foods always smell so strong, but that's because there's actually spices in it and flavor and seasonings and other things that people should be using.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Asian Hustle Network and Meta Prosper Creators podcast. I'm very excited to have Chef Priyanka Naik on our show today. Priyanka is a self-taught Indian vegan award-winning chef, Food Network champion, TV host, author of The Modern Tiffin, columnist of Eco Kitchen for The Washington Post, pop-up restaurateur, and a TEDx speaker. An avid traveler who's been to 43 countries, her globally inspired original recipes with a focus on sustainability have been featured on her blog Chef Priyanka, her domestic and global pop-ups on Today Table, an NBC Peacock TV show she co-hosts, are incorporated into her regular speaking appearances. Priyanka, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm super excited to have you on the show today. So I'd love to know, we know that cooking was a huge part of your family's day-to-day life. I also read that you traveled to India nearly every year during summer vacation. You also visited the Hindu temple regularly in Queens, and your family cooked a lot while you were growing up, and I'm sure they still do. Can you share what it was like for you while you were growing up and how this all affected your lifestyle and your cooking style as you grew older?
Yeah, so I'm first generation Indian American. I'm born and raised in New York City, specifically Staten Island. And if you know anything about Staten Island or the borough, Staten Island is the forgotten borough, and it is very different from Manhattan or Queens or Brooklyn or any of the other boroughs that have an immense amount of diversity. It is actually very homogenous, like Italian, Eastern European, Roman Catholic, and that played a huge role in our upbringing because we were obviously very different. We looked different. We spoke a different language. We ate different food. Our, spiritual belief system and religion was completely different. So we weren't entirely embraced and accepted for that. Unfortunately, things have changed a little bit now, but back in the 90s, it was a little bit difficult to, look like us and go to school and be accepted. So that could have gone, one of two ways. I think that could have gone in a way where you're sort of rejecting your culture and your background because you're trying to assimilate into Western American culture. Or it can go another way, which is you seek a lot of comfort in your culture and it's sort of your comfortable home life and you want to learn more about it. And so I kind of went that way, the latter. And it was primarily due to the way my parents brought us up and the importance on culture that they put. And also, as you mentioned, the traveling to India. Like I went to India at 3 months old, I think, and then kept going ever since. And primarily because our entire family was there. We were the only ones that were here. So I learned my native language of Kannada before I learned English. I grew up vegetarian. We cooked all the time at home. I was also very exposed to Indian food and customs and culture in India. So I always say that I'm very much Indian as I am American. And I am very proud of it because I find that it's like probably one of my most unique characteristics and it's something that I'm born with. So yeah, it wasn't the easiest, but I sort of used that upbringing and that experience as fuel for my now career as a chef and, author and everything else that you mentioned.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. I totally agree with you that you can go one way or the other. I mean, building Asian Hustle Network, we come across so many people who are from so many different parts of America. And it really depends on where you grow up, how your environment is. And if you are in an environment where you're in a predominantly non-Asian location, obviously that can affect the way that you grow up, right? You can either be trying to kind of sway away from your culture, or you can like try to find out more about your culture, learn more about it because you've been so deprived of your cultural heritage, right? And so I'm so glad you kind of like went towards the way where you're trying to learn more about it. And that goes to show, how your parents had raised you as well, how your family had raised you, and try to like instill more of these teachings and learnings about your culture heritage. So I'm glad that that happened.
Yeah, I agree too. And it's funny because I have friends who grew up in, let's say, New Jersey or somewhere where they were immersed in this sort of Indian communities. And I feel that I'm more Indian than them. And it's I don't know how that worked out that way, but it just did. So
Yeah, absolutely. So, can you talk about your experience at Boston University? I know that you switched majors multiple times and you switched from bio to econ. Was cooking full-time ever something that had crossed your mind at that time while you were kind of switching majors? And I'm sure you were cooking already, but did you ever think like, maybe I can do this as a profession?
So when I was in high school, I actually considered going to culinary school. I did meet with the culinary school reps from Johnson and Wales and Culinary Institute of America, which at the time were the two biggest in the country. And through my research, I found out a few things that just didn't sit well with me. One, you had to cook and eat meat, and that completely went against my philosophy. I grew up vegetarian, and it just wouldn't make sense to all of a sudden start eating meat when I sort of didn't embrace that life. The second thing is it was nearly as expensive as going to a regular college, a regular four-year college, and I found that that was extremely risky. Even as, a 15, 16-year old, I kind of had the sensibility to be like, hey, like that puts me at risk because you only go to learn cooking. Like I asked them, like, do you have any other pre-professional courses you offer? They're like, no, this is a cooking school. And I'm like, okay, so if I go to cooking school and I come out, then I'm obligated to become a cook. Like there's no other route. Like there's no business courses, there's no econ courses, like there's no other courses offered that enable me to become a more holistic young professional. So I felt that that was very risky. And the third thing is some schools only spend 3 days to a week, quote unquote, on Asian cuisine. And I put this in quotes because I have no idea what one is teaching in Asian week. You can't even learn, my regional cooking, Indian cooking in a week. So I felt that all of those things were turnoffs for me. I'm sure things have changed now. But it just didn't make sense from a monetary and sort of career standpoint. So yes, I did end up going to Boston University, and because I'm brown, it's a rite of passage to do pre-med. And I started on that course, and I was really into it. I had always been into science and all of that. But then my middle sister got into medical school and became a doctor. So I was like, all right, well, we have that covered in the family. So I don't really need to do this anymore. And I switched my major to econ, mainly because I was, transparently, I was just a lot better at it without having to try too hard. And I was like, I'm doing really well in these courses. It's much more interesting to me. So I switched and I was pre-law because I was like, I like arguing. Maybe I'll become a good lawyer. And I graduated, I took my LSAT and I got into different schools. And then I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to go. It requires a lot of reading and writing. I don't really like to read. I don't really like to write. So I was like, I don't know if this is a good option for me. So I forgoed the law school plan and instead I went into consulting. And so from there I had a 12-year career in tech and consulting and product development. So completely different from all the cooking stuff, but it was just happening. It was parallel pathing, this whole other life of mine.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That is insane. First of all, it's crazy to me that they only teach Asian cooking for like a couple of days. I mean, I had no idea before you even told me that. So that is just mind blowing to me. And you mentioned like you can even learn your own regional cooking for like those amount of days. And I totally agree. So I'm just like, I hope things have changed nowadays, but just hearing that is extremely wild.
Unfortunately, I don't know if it's actually changed. I recently met with someone or happened to meet someone who had recently graduated from culinary school, and she mentioned like, yeah, you spend like 3 days on Asia, and I'm like, oh my God,
Oh
like,
my
which
goodness.
these schools like Cordon Bleu, all of these, they're European by nature, they're Italian, they're French, yeah, so that's understandable. However, things have to keep up with the times and the diversity, especially within this country. So yeah, it is certainly disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think it's really just admirable how you just kind of stuck to your roots and noticed that there were these gaps in culinary school and the fact that a lot of them, even to this day, they don't, allow you to even go to culinary school if you just want to learn how to do, vegan cooking style. And so because of that, I've read that you are entirely self-taught. And I think that is just super cool. I think that back then, I feel like a lot of people felt that they needed to go to culinary school in order to become a chef, right? And I feel like with the rise of like social media now, a lot of people are becoming self-taught cooks and chefs. So I think that is extremely admirable and just very, very cool that we could even get to have a voice on our platforms, right? Create a platform for ourselves if we want to just do like home cooking videos or something like that and just create a name for ourselves, right? So when did you start doing these cooking videos and your blog, Chef Priyanka? Can you share about that and like how that all started?
Yeah, so I started my blog, I would say right around when I finished college. So this is now like 100 years ago, but I started it way back when because this predates all of this social media stuff. Like Twitter was around, Instagram was around, but it was for personal use. People were posting pictures of their boyfriends and their dogs. Like no one was using it as a business. So I had a blog. I started putting out my recipes mainly to get people interested in vegetarian food at the time and getting people to think differently about how they eat. And it started getting picked up a little bit more across the different platforms that were available. The first actually was Twitter because it was the only public social media platform available. So I used Twitter a lot. And then when Facebook pages came around, that was a big thing. Like I used that to create my first official Chef Priyanka quote unquote page where I was able to more publicly share my posts and my photos and kind of what I was eating and cooking. But it really wasn't until I would say right before the pandemic, I started more aggressively putting out videos. And it was actually my sisters who were like, you post a lot of your food photos and like your recipes, but like we don't see a lot of you in your content or your photos. Like maybe you want to post some stuff with you in it. So that's when I started taking photos of myself and posting it. And then I started doing more videos, and the video thing really ramped up. I think it was 2020 when Instagram released Reels. And Instagram first released Reels, I believe, as 15-second videos, which was insane because I was like trying to show like a whole cauliflower recipe in 15 seconds, which was just like freaking bonkers. Like you can't even learn a full recipe in 1 minute now, but like let alone 15 seconds. But I started putting it out more. I was part of the creator group at the time where I was able to access a lot of these features a little bit earlier than others, and that was very exciting to me. So I started more aggressively putting my videos out there, and it became a regular routine for me because I would anyway take photos and content of like, this is what I'm eating. So I'm like, okay, well, may as well just make that a video now, right? So it's just sort of organically happened. And then with the help of the different platform features, it sort of enabled further exposure and creativity.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I love the fact that you had the advice of like putting yourself in these videos because I do remember like when the reels were 15 seconds, stories were 15 seconds, everything was like just 15 seconds. And then people were like posting, like foodies were posting stuff that they were eating on their Instagram, right? Just like, and then you put a filter on it, but then we would rarely put ourselves in those pictures or in those videos, right? And it was as soon as you put yourself in those videos, you start to create this sense of like community because people start to learn about your personality. And I think that's what people love about you, Priyanka. Like everyone always says, like they love your personality. They love how like excited you always are in your cooking videos, and it just puts like a smile on people's faces because like you get people excited to cook, I feel like. So I think that's what people love about you and your content so much. And I will love to know, you when you started your blog and you started posting all of this content, I think what I've been seeing a lot is like people said how like authentic and real you were. And like I can definitely sense the excitement that you have when you're cooking in these videos and you're sharing your vegan recipes. What have you been what you have been able to expand from your food blog has really transpired into this following of like over 200,000 people on the Meta apps, on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and everything like that. What were some of these strategies you think that you implemented in order to grow such a meaningful community and find sustainable long-term success on these apps?
I think the food that I make is a direct reflection of me. I think it's just I obviously love cooking. I love eating. We have the privilege of choosing what we want to eat every day. And I truly, truly embrace that and don't take it for granted. And food that I put on my plate is like just a direct reflection of my personality. Like the plate is always very colorful and dynamic and textured. And I think people started noticing that or realizing that through my content. And I felt that when I started sharing more content of me eating the food, that excited people. So much so that there is a Reddit slander thread on me, which is a whole other topic. But I mean, I think one of the pieces of feedback I get from people and like brands is they're like, we love how much you enjoy the food. And I'm like, yeah, well, like, I hope I'm enjoying what I make, right? Like, if I wasn't, then I shouldn't be cooking. Or like, there's so many times I see people put content out there and then like they don't take a bite. And I'm like, well, how was it? Like, did it taste good? Like, what was the texture like?
Yes.
And like, I'm just like, even when I was little and I watched Food Network, it was like, you wait for the moment that they cut into it or they bite it. Or, there's always been that joke with Giada from Everyday Italian. We're always like, oh, she doesn't eat her food because she's so tiny and she makes all this stuff, right? But she's always taking a bite. So I think for me, it really sort of got amped up when people see me eating in it and enjoying. And of course, like things that became bigger over the years are like ASMR and the visual appeal of cooking and the frying noises and the sizzling and with Indian food especially and a lot of different Asian cuisines, like there's so many ASMR things like putting curry leaves in hot oil and sizzling like chili oil and all that kind of stuff. So like I think that with the combination of like seeing someone actually enjoy their food is a win-win in my opinion. Like I don't think I have a video out there where I'm not taking a bite of something. And if I do, I will have to delete it. But I don't think I do.
Oh, thank goodness. I absolutely agree. I feel like every time I see a video of someone creating a recipe or cooking, and if they don't show the result or the reaction when they're taking a bite, I feel like I'm not satisfied. Like I feel like I've been robbed of my like final seconds of realizing how it tasted. And I agree, like everyone looks forward to seeing how the chef actually likes it, right? If the chef doesn't like it, then it's like, why should I follow this recipe? Oh,
Exactly.
yeah. So I mean, obviously, success itself looks different for every creator, right? Based on where they are in their journey and their specific goals. When you were creating content, what would you say was the turning point for you in your content creation journey? And when did you start to see success and be like, oh, I'm actually creating a like really sustainable platform and community with my followers, right? Yeah, like when did you start to see success on especially these meta apps?
There's two moments I kind of felt that I was seeing success. And the first is, and this is every person who I would say is putting content out there or is a content creator, is getting exposure and going viral, right? Like that is the moment where you feel like, oh my God, finally, like people are seeing my content. And so that happened with me in 2022. Like I did actually go viral. I'm just thinking back. I went viral on one of my recipes, which to date is like one of my most popular ones, which is this like long green noodle that I made using leftovers from like a TV shoot that I had to do. And I brought all this food home just in an effort to not have it go wasted. And that dish went viral. And that was probably the dish that have seen most people recreate. And that's to me is like, okay, there's one thing going viral, but then that's like 1A, but 1B is like, are you actually making my food? And I think that's one of the most satisfying things is people actually taking your recipes, cooking them, eating them, posting about it. That brings me an immense amount of joy. And I would say the 1C is having high profile people find you and follow you, right? Like I think it was that recipe that Chrissy Teigen saw and follows me. And like we started like a friendly relationship over Instagram because of that. And that's huge, right? Like when would we ever be able to get our content, our videos in front of celebrities like that formally? Probably never, right? Social media is the only place where you're able to actually do that. And then my second area of success, or where I feel like it's successful for me or has been, is brands that I truly admire recognizing me and wanting to work with me. I think that is very important as a business person and a content creator. Like I don't have millions of followers yet, but I think the quality of the content that I'm putting out is noticeable by brands and people that I care about. And so that's what's important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like creating that community is so important. Like if Chrissy Teigen messaged you or reached out to you and you didn't see it, or you weren't making an effort to create this community and respond to your followers, respond to your fans, like it probably wouldn't have been such a strong community, right? And I think that's what creates this like fan base, this like really strong following when people actually want to reach out to their role models and that role model responds, it creates such a strong connection. And I think that's how you were able to kind of build this like really strong fan base. And just like the content that you're putting out too, I feel like a lot of people were probably looking for vegan and vegetarian recipes, but didn't know where to turn to. I feel like that's not what a lot of people see nowadays on Instagram. I think there's been more and more, but especially back then, I feel like you were probably just like the pioneer, just like putting that content out. So just having a bunch of people look for that specific content and finding it on your platform was probably really helpful for them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it basically took my blog and gave it life, right? Like that's what Instagram and a lot of these platforms were able to do. And for me, Instagram is basically my portfolio, right? Like when models have like portfolios and Z cards, like mine is my Instagram, right? I'm like, oh, okay, here's my Instagram. Go check it out. Like that's the best place to learn about me and like my content and my work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to take a step back and talk about when you were kind of balancing the two between your corporate life and cooking on the side. Because, this is Asian Hustle Network. I think a lot of people do have side hustles, or maybe they're trying to pursue their side hustle full time. So while you were at these major corporations such as Bloomberg and Twitter, I feel like you've always found a way to connect your professional life with cooking. So, I've heard that you were recognized for some incredible feats at Twitter and joined their Guest Chef Hall of Fame, amongst other food luminaries. Can you share a little bit about that experience and how you were able to manage the two and balance the two? Because I think that's like, for me, reading about that, I'm like, wow, that is a lot to take on, just to have a full-time job and cook on the side, but, not only cook, but like, be really involved in the community and be a part of all of these events and experiences. So how did you balance the two?
Yeah, well, I'm crazy. That is the there, but I think it was a matter of prioritizing my time and understanding what's important to me and what may not be as important at that given point in my life. I did certainly make a lot of sacrifices to be able to parallel path both of those careers. I made a lot of, social outing sacrifices, personal sacrifices, because I'm human and we only have 24 hours in a day. But I obviously really do love cooking and I would talk about it all the time, but I would always find a way to incorporate it into my jobs, like even way before Bloomberg. I was at a media agency called Viviki, which was Publicis. I incorporated food there. I created like a little social event there called a bread bake off, where like we were whoever wanted to participate, we would assign a bread that week. Like one week would be focaccia, and like we would go back to our respective homes, bake it, bring it back into the office, and then do like blind taste tests, and people would pick a winner. At Bloomberg, I created something called Bloomberg Pantry, where we basically had these kitchens at all of the Bloomberg offices where they had like snacks and condiments and drinks, and you wouldn't get like a full-on meal, but you could get like toast and stuff. So it mainly started out as a joke for me because I was just like, oh, I wonder if I can make like breakfast and lunch here by using what they have, so I don't have to go out and spend money. So it was me being really cheap, but I would find things like they had the jellies and sometimes they would have crudité, and so I would take those items and like make meals out of it. Like I took the tomatoes that they had one day for crudité and like made a sauce out of it, and then made these little like grilled cheese toasties, and I started posting about it. I created an account on Instagram. I did not take anyone's permission, which was not good. So I don't advise anyone to do that. But I started posting about it. It started gaining like a lot of following within the Bloomberg employee community because people were like, oh, like that's a cool thing. Like, oh, that's cute. And it got noticed by the chief operating officer at
Wow.
Bloomberg. And they wanted to they originally were like, who is this? And like, what? Because I didn't post my name or like my face. I was just like posting the food. And they originally wanted to like shut it down, but then they were like, wow, this is actually really cool from like a community standpoint and culture standpoint. So I met with them to make it official, and it still exists today. Like someone else is managing Bloomberg Pantry. And it's used now as a platform to not only share like food across the offices globally, but like culture and like community events. At Twitter, like most tech companies, we have, or we had, not we, I don't work there anymore, but the offices had cafeterias. So like Google has it, and Facebook and Twitter, and you would get breakfast and lunch, and the food at New York's especially was like very good. We had a former executive chef at one of Marcus Samuelson's restaurants, so we were very lucky to have really good food. I noticed that they would sometimes have celebrity chefs in as guest chefs. So I decided to pitch myself, and what I did at Twitter and in all these roles like was completely unrelated to food. So first at these places, they were just like, oh, like, are you like super into food? And I was like, yeah, like, and I had won Food Network earlier before, and like, my stuff was just picking up, but I obviously wasn't who I was today. So they were just kind of like, are you really into food? And I'm like, yeah, like I do all this stuff. And so I guest chefed at Twitter SF, at Twitter New York, and it was really fun because it brings about a different culture if your colleagues kind of see what else you're passionate about outside of just your work. And I led product teams and data science teams, so it was like completely unrelated to what I did at work, which I think was even more fun to kind of share that other side of me. So I've always incorporated food into wherever I was. I think I had the advantage of having a skill and a passion to to do a craft that can involve other people. So I try to just like maneuver it into these corporations as much as I can.
Yeah, I mean, oh gosh, like first of all, that Bloomberg pantry idea is brilliant, especially when you're working at these tech corporations. Like usually it's like based in downtown, right? And like to get breakfast or lunch outside, it's like super expensive. And I'm always
Yeah.
trying to find ways to like get breakfast inside the offices, but then you always get like the eggs and like, a piece of bread. It's like, what am I supposed to do with this? But I think if you have that like chef mentality, you would definitely like put something together, and you were the first one to create this community out of it. And I'm so glad they didn't shut it down because look at what it's turned into today. But yeah, that is super cool. I think especially when you're so passionate about something, you can't help but incorporate it into all these different aspects of your life. And that's exactly what you did. And you were able to share that with like other people in your life, people who were surrounding you. So that's just super, super admirable and cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, if you can if you can while still maintaining all your workload, like I advise you to do it because it's like it for me it was also like a release, like a like oh, like if you feel like you're in a rut at work or you're just like tired, like I would just go up to the pantry and like put something together and like take photos and be like, okay, I'm re-energized again.
Love it. So I'd love to kind of switch gears and talk about your book. Can you tell the audience like what was the inspiration behind writing your book, The Modern Tiffin, and what can readers expect out of it?
Yeah, so my book, which is right there, I think is my thumb covering. Yeah, there it is. Yay. It feels like it's so far in the video, but it's like right there.
It does look a little bit small, but yeah, if
Yeah.
you look it up on Google, you'll be able to see what it looks like. It's beautiful. It's also like very colorful and like very like the color pops into your face. So like exactly what you mentioned, your personality is like. So.
Thank you. Yeah, so the book is called The Modern Tiffin. A tiffin is actually let me bring it over because I think it'll be really fun to actually see.
Yeah,
But
sounds good.
this is a tiffin. Um,
Oh,
yeah, so it's like a steel stacked like food carrying container set. So like basically these like come out and then you have all these little containers in here
oh,
and you
that's super
can
cool.
like I just keep paper towel in it so it doesn't get gross, but you can stack all of your food and then it makes it portable. And this whole concept of cooking food and carrying it was and is very popular in India. So it really resonated with me because I grew up taking my lunch every day to school. My mom cooked us lunch all the time. And it wasn't just like a bologna sandwich. We obviously were vegetarian, but it would be like a homemade eggplant parm sandwich or a Bombay sandwich, or it was always very healthy and hearty. And then when I entered the corporate world, I cooked for myself and brought lunch actually almost every day, mainly because like I was cheap and I didn't want to spend $20 on a salad that barely filled me up, or you don't know what's in it, so it's like we don't know the health factor of it. So I felt that I was sort of an anomaly in that space of cooking for yourself and packing food and bringing it and making it portable. And the convenience of the US especially kind of has taken away that idea of cooking for yourself and bringing food for yourself. So I wanted to reinstill that with modern generations and younger generations because it had such a lasting impact on me. And I felt that it really changed my perspective on how I viewed food and how I ate and what I ate and how I cooked. So the modern tiffin is basically this concept of taking different meals and actually making it portable and bringing it, anywhere you go. Obviously, you could just cook those dishes and eat it at home, but I share in each chapter after each dish how you can make it portable. But the other unique factor about the book is Every chapter focuses on a different place in the world that I've been to. So as you mentioned, I've traveled a lot, and traveling has been immensely influential on my culinary expertise and my perspective on food. And so I wanted to bring a lot of that to this book. And in the chance that maybe a reader doesn't have the chance to go to these places, you could feel like you're traveling to these places through these dishes. So each of the dishes in the book are from a different part of the world, but they all have some sort of like Indian sprinkling to it. So in the Australian chapter, there's an avocado toast, and avocado toast actually originated on Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia. And that's what I learned when I went there. So I wanted to my avocado toast in that chapter is an ode to, the original place of avocado toast, but there's an Indian spin on it. So I make like a dry chili peanut chutney to top it. There's pomegranate and a chili oil. So the concept is Australian, but then the flavor profile is very Indian. So that's kind of an example of the different types of dishes throughout the book. So I want people to get into the kitchen and be excited about cooking and feel like there's a plethora of recipes that they could choose from any part of the world.
Yeah, I did not know that avocado toast was from Sydney, Australia. That's something that I just
Yeah.
learned as well.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for explaining the title of the book. I feel like I just learned that as well, and it's really cool to see the Tiffin. That was probably like one of the first few times that I've seen it, and so I think that's so important for you to showcase that because that is so prevalent in like Asian cultures and Asian recipes. Like we always put it into like, small containers that are portable and like bring it to our office or bring it to wherever we're going to. And just you incorporating a lot of your Indian recipes into your book is so, so important. And, tying that back to your cultural heritage, because I feel like for a lot of us as Asians, bringing our cultural food to like work, like a lot of us, we have like a lot of trauma with that, right? Like with a lot of our coworkers saying it smells funny. I'm Chinese, so I've had those experiences. Like my mom loved making steamed fish, and I would always bring that into work and like put it into the microwave, and it will always like have this like really big stench. But I think a lot of people in the Asian community like go through that as they're growing up, and so just now embracing that and realizing like the food that we eat is delicious and we want to share it with the rest of the world, right? So I'm really grateful that you were able to do that with the Modern Tiffin.
Thank you. Yeah, and I agree. Yeah, that our foods always smell so strong, but that's because there's actually spices in it and flavor and seasonings and other things that people should be using.
Absolutely. Love it. So, Priyanka, what is next for you at this point in your life? And do you have any future plans that you would like to share with the audience?
I mean, I think this sort of life is, while I've been doing it for a while, I haven't been doing it full time until I was laid off from Twitter at the end of 2022. So it hasn't been too long, and so I'm still giving myself some runway and patience to achieve all the goals that I want to achieve. Like with this type of industry, with that, whether it's media and publishing and the creative arts, like it's not easy to get all the things you want. And what I'm saying is like it's not necessarily easy in the corporate world, but at least in the corporate world or professions like medicine, law, etc., there is like a path that right? Like these are the things I have to do to get promoted. These are the things I have to do to specialize in certain surgery. Like with our type of work or creative work, there's no such like, oh, these are the three things I need to do to have a book or to have a show. Like a lot of it is persistence, networking, continuously putting yourself out there. So in my grand scheme of goals and plans, I do want to have a full-time show. I think that's always been on the radar. It's always been a goal. First, it was a dream, but now it's a goal because I think goals are attainable. Dreams may not necessarily be attainable, considering a dream is like in your head. So that is certainly a goal of mine. I feel that I am getting closer, but again, it's very difficult. So I have to just get the right people on my side in order to achieve that. A second goal is getting a second book out there, but less of a traditional cookbook, and more of a guidebook on living sustainably. Obviously, living, cooking, eating sustainably is a huge focus of mine, and I hope to instill what I learn onto other people so they can be more thoughtful about what they do. And this year it's a lot more live events, speaking events. I'm doing a cooking demo at the Culinary Institute of America in Napa, which is hilarious because it comes full circle. I didn't go to culinary school. Doesn't mean I can't teach there. And doing a lot of brand partnerships with brands that I really love and align with my ethos. Yeah, so it's been like a very wild ride and continues to be, and each day is very different. So the most I can say is, if you plan to pursue your passions, like don't expect it to be a walk in the park. I know a lot of people say that, but it is like the highs can be very high, but the lows can be extremely low. And you could feel like, oh my God, why am I doing this? Or like you feel very financially, anxious. But things will work when they're meant to work, but you just have to keep pushing, you can't just be sitting around and expect something to happen.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for mentioning that. I think, for Asian Hustle Network, the community, it's like a lot of us are entrepreneurs, founders. And I agree, like when you do have a corporate job, like that is hard as well. But then there is kind of like maybe you have a manager to tell you, how to do certain things. But going into entrepreneurship, you have no blueprint, you have no like plan on how exactly to do things. And everyone does it a little bit differently. And you kind of just go with the flow and like learn as you go as well. And that's exactly how you learn, right? And that's exactly how you're able to grow and build upon this business that you're building for yourself. So I'm excited to see all of the things that you are going to be working on in the next year. I think that is incredible that how like everything is coming full circle, but it really goes to show how much work that you've put in. Not only in these last couple of years since you've been laid off, but like even before that, I think you really laid the groundwork and the foundation for your career that you have today, which is very important. I think a lot of people don't see that because they think that the success is overnight, but it's like years and years and years of hard work and that accumulating to what you have today. So really proud of what you've been able to build.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, it is truly a hustle, pun intended, and it could be very exhausting, but this type of work is also then very gratifying, right? So to your point, a lot of that years of work or behind the scenes stuff that, one can feel like, well, why am I doing this? It will manifest itself in ways that you may not necessarily expect. So yeah, we just have to keep going, and communities like Asian Hustle Network and others like the Facebook community, Instagram, like my partner manager there, like they've been supporting me for a very long time. And that is, those are relationships, and support that I certainly will never overlook, because a lot of people like that have been supporting me before I was anywhere near what I am today. So I really do appreciate the support, and for you kind of asking me about my story and my journey.
Yeah, of course. So, Priyanka, we have one last question for you, and that is, what advice do you have for someone who is just starting out on their content creation journey, and trying to better connect with their audience in a more meaningful way, especially on the meta apps like Instagram, Facebook, and Threads?
So the first thing I will say is, don't try to just reinvent the wheel or become a carbon copy of someone else. Like a lot of things that I see are, oh, this recipe's trending, so I'm going to do this, or oh, this video style works for this guy or this girl, so I'm going to do it. And I think the creators that I love the most are the ones that are, they may not even have like these massive followings, because again, it's not about that for me, but they have such a unique way of putting their content out, and their personality really shines through. I think the one thing we emphasized here is the personality piece, right? Like if you really do love doing something, it will come through. But if you're just doing it to make a quick buck, then like don't do it, because it's like there's a lot easier ways in life to make money than doing this, to be honest. So do it unless like just do it because you truly do love it. And I would say take advantages of all of the different features. Like one of my favorite features actually on Instagram, particularly, is the broadcast channel. I think it's actually an extremely effective way to broadcast to your entire community if they don't see your stories, right? Because as we all know, story views are a hit or miss. Some days I have tens of thousands and other days I have a couple hundred. So it can be inconsistent. So the broadcast channel has been, I found, in a very effective way to poll my community, to share big announcements. Yesterday, I actually had a feature for Holy on the actual Facebook account, like the OG Facebook account, and I shared that to my broadcast channel. And some people messaged me from there being like, "Oh my God, I didn't see this. Like, thank you for sharing." So I think take advantage of broadcast. And also Threads has been a very fun way for me to communicate and also build a new audience. Obviously, I used to work at Twitter, so I have a soft spot for the kind of the casual communication of Threads. It's not as curated at it as Instagram. So if I'm kind of in the middle of making a recipe or just want to share a thought or like just want to casually poll people, I feel like Threads has been also very effective for me there. Like I just posted something today, like, what are 3 vegetables you hate? Because I'm doing this series on taking vegetables that people hate and making them delicious. And I have like hundreds of replies on it, right? So that to me is like a very effective way to continue growing my community. So this all, I'm saying all of this to make sure that you use all of the different features across the Meta and Instagram platforms, because Reels is effective, but it's not the only thing. There's many times I go days without posting a reel because I don't necessarily have new content, and that's okay. I'm using all these other facets of the platform to still engage with my community. And the last thing I'll say is don't take no for an answer. I've been rejected and continue to be rejected in certain instances a lot before I get a yes. And I think it's important to understand that while you may love something, you may think it's amazing, like it may not resonate yet with other people. So you have to continue being persistent and taking in feedback and making changes where possible. So that would be my last piece of advice.
Yeah, that was extremely helpful. Thank you so much for breaking it down for the audience and like kind of like elaborating on which platforms and apps were the most helpful for you. I agree there's like different ones that would be beneficial depending on how you want to reach out to your audience. If you want to do like one-way communication like the broadcast channel, or if you want to like engage with them a little bit more like stories and Instagram Live and stuff like that. So I definitely agree with you. I think, not taking no for an answer, or, just don't be defeated if you get rejected. I think as an entrepreneur, as a content creator, you're going to get that a lot. But yeah, those are all really great advice. And I have been loving the Which Vegetable Do You Hate series a lot. Like I saw the okra one yesterday and I'm like, wow, you made that look so delicious. I'm going to try that one.
Yay! Yeah, that's my mission, to get people to embrace things they hate.
Love it. So, Chef Priyanka, where can our listeners find more about you online, on Instagram, on Threads, on Facebook?
So I'm at Chef Priyanka across all socials, and my website's www.chefpriyanka.com. So basically anything Chef Priyanka you can find. You can Google me and you'll find me. But yeah, I'm very excited to connect with all of you, and I really appreciate this conversation today.
Amazing. I had a really great time interviewing you. Thank you so much for being on the AHN and Meta Prosper Creators podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maggie.